I had 14 days before the divorce papers were finalized and everything I'd built turned to ash. My hand trembled as I picked up the marriage certificate, the embossed seal catching the harsh fluorescent light of my corner office. The paper felt too substantial, too real, like it was mocking me with its permanence. January 1st, 2025. 31 days ago, I'd signed my name in champagne-drunk cursive. Now it looked like someone else's handwriting entirely. Around me, Ashford and Klein hummed with the low frequency of ambition, keyboard clicks, hushed conversations, the whisper of expensive Italian leather against Herman Miller chairs. Outside, February's bitter wind rattled the glass. But in here, everything was bright, too bright, exposing. I approached my own reflection in the window like I was facing a stranger. Claire Ashford stared back, dark circles under her eyes, blonde hair pulled into a knot so tight it gave me a headache. I wore my armor well, Armani suit, Cartier watch, the kind of professional polish that cost more than most people's mortgages. My hand rested on the glass, fingers leaving condensation prints that disappeared as quickly as they formed. Behind me, through the glass wall of my office, I could see the associates pretending not to watch. Their eyes darted toward me, then away, like I was a case study in catastrophic judgment. Saracen leaned close to Michael Rodriguez, whispering something that made them both glance my way. They looked sympathetic. They shouldn't have been. 32 days ago, I'd watched Preston Hayes order my professional destruction. The Winterlight Gala's coat check wasn't really a coat check. It was a marble-floored alcove in the back of the ballroom, all gilt mirrors and soft lighting that made everything look like a dream. I'd gone to retrieve my wrap, champagne fuzzy and laughing at something Preston had said about Keynesian economics. That's when I'd heard the voices. Preston's voice, low and measured, carrying through the half-open service door, the conflict of interest should be locked in by New Year's. Once we're married, she'll have to recuse herself from Meridian. The takeover goes through, your firm gets the commission, I get my debts cleared. A woman's voice, smooth as silk, cold as January, and if she suspects? She won't. Claire's brilliant, but she's desperate to believe in something good. Her ex destroyed that instinct. I'm just giving her what she wants, magic, spontaneity, someone who sees her. It's almost too easy. The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You always did know how to play a mark, Preston. Just make sure you're convincing. We need her signature on that marriage license before she realizes what kind of man you really are. I'd stood there in the alcove, one hand on my forgotten wrap, the other pressed against my mouth to keep from making a sound. The mirror showed me my own face, flushed with champagne and something I'd been afraid to call hope. In the ballroom beyond, a string quartet played the first Noel. I'd married him anyway. Not because I didn't hear the truth, but because every instinct I'd spent 12 years honing as a divorce attorney screamed that I was about to walk away from the only real thing I'd felt since Daniel shattered my heart. Because Preston's kiss tasted like honesty and his hands shook when he held me and the way he looked at me made me feel like I wasn't broken. I told myself I'd misheard. Misunderstood. That my paranoid, litigation-scarred brain was inventing conspiracy where there was only coincidence. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be lies. Now, standing in my office with the marriage certificate in one hand and an unsigned contract in the other, the one I'd found in Preston's coat pocket 3 days ago, the one with Vanessa's sterling signature at the bottom and the notation conflict of interest secured, January 1st, 25 in the margin, I finally understood what I should have known from the beginning. I hadn't misheard anything. I'd just been desperate enough to marry a liar wrapped in Christmas lights and call it a miracle. I found him at the champagne fountain, which felt cosmically appropriate given that I was on my 4th glass and seriously contemplating a 5th. The Winterlight Gala was everything I usually avoided: forced cheer, mandatory networking, couples slow dancing to a string quartet's rendition of holiday standards that made my teeth ache. My ex-fiancé Daniel had loved these events. He'd work the room like a politician, his hand always on my lower back, steering me toward whoever could advance his career. 3 weeks ago, I'd caught him steering someone else into our bedroom. So here I was, alone at a charity gala on Christmas Eve, wearing a dress I'd bought for our wedding rehearsal dinner and drinking champagne like it was water. If you're planning to drown yourself in Veuve Clicquot, you should know it takes approximately 9 glasses, a voice said beside me. I've done the research. I turned. The man standing there had the kind of face that made you forget whatever cutting response you'd prepared. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that crinkled at the corners like he smiled often but was trying not to right now. His tuxedo fit him the way expensive things fit people who actually deserve them, effortlessly. Only 9? I heard myself say. That seems inefficient. His smile broke through. I know. You'd think premium champagne would be more effective. He picked up a flute, examined it like it might contain answers. Preston Hayes. And before you ask, yes, I'm alone, no, I don't want to be here, and yes, I'm spectacularly bad at relationships, which is why I'm talking to a beautiful woman about the logistics of champagne-based self-destruction instead of literally anything charming. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. Claire Ashford. And that might be the most honest introduction I've ever heard at one of these things. Honesty's underrated at galas. Everyone's performing. He gestured at the ballroom, where couples twirled under crystal chandeliers and fairy lights. Look at them. Half these people are pretending to be in love, the other half are pretending they're not slowly dying inside. Which half are you? The dying inside half. You? Same. I picked up another glass. Though I'm working on the pretending part. We talked. God, we talked. About everything and nothing, his work in corporate strategy, my career dismantling marriages, the particular hell of family expectations during the holidays, the way Chicago winters felt like punishment. He had this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, like every word you said mattered. At midnight, the gala wound down. Staff began clearing tables, dimming lights. Preston and I had migrated to a corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snow fall over the city. I should go, I said, not moving. You should, he agreed, not moving either. At 2 a.m., a tired-looking manager approached us. I'm sorry, but we're closing. Preston looked at me, snowflakes catching in the lights behind him. This might be insane, but would you like to get breakfast? There's a diner on Randolph that makes pancakes at 3 a.m. I should have said no. Every professional instinct screamed caution. Yes, I said instead. And just like that, I walked straight into the most beautiful trap of my life. The week between Christmas and New Year's existed outside of time, like we'd fallen into a snow globe and someone had shaken it until reality dissolved into glitter and impossibility. Christmas morning, Preston showed up at my apartment with coffee and croissants from the French bakery that never closed. We ate on my couch, still in our clothes from the night before, watching the sun come up over Lake Michigan. He told me about his childhood in Boston, old money family, expectations that felt like chains. I told him about mine, Midwest practical, law school on scholarships, the constant pressure to prove I belonged in rooms full of people who'd never had to prove anything. We're both performing, he said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Pretending we're not terrified of failing. What if we stopped pretending? I asked. He kissed me instead of answering, and it felt like falling. On the 26th, we ice skated at Millennium Park. I was terrible at it, kept grabbing his arm while he glided backward, laughing at my complete lack of coordination. When I finally fell, taking him down with me, we lay on the ice staring up at the gray winter sky, breath fogging between us. I'm spectacularly bad at this, I gasped. You're spectacular at everything, he said, and the way he looked at me made me believe it. We spent the 27th in bed, ordering takeout and watching terrible holiday movies. Preston cooked me breakfast, actual breakfast with eggs and toast and coffee that didn't taste like desperation. He moved around my kitchen like he belonged there, humming something off-key, and I felt something dangerous bloom in my chest. On the 28th, I took him to Armitage Books, my secret haven tucked between a dry cleaner and a tattoo parlor. We got lost in the stacks, stealing kisses between shelves, him reading me passages from beat poets while I pretended to be scandalized. He bought me a first edition of something I'd mentioned loving in college. I didn't ask what it cost. "Tell me something true," I said that night, in another diner at another ungodly hour, his hand warm around mine. He hesitated, something flickering across his face. "I have a complicated past. Some debts I'm working through. Nothing that will touch you, but it's there." I should have asked questions. Any lawyer worth her bar exam would have drilled down, demanded details, protected herself. "Is it handled?" I asked instead. "It's handled." I chose to believe him. I chose to let the magic of this impossible week drown out every instinct that had kept me safe for 34 years. I chose to feel instead of think, to trust instead of interrogate, to fall instead of build walls. By the 30th, we'd stopped going back to separate apartments. His toothbrush appeared in my bathroom. My books migrated to his nightstand. We existed in this bubble where the outside world couldn't reach us, where past betrayals and future consequences didn't matter. "This is insane," I whispered on New Year's Eve morning, wrapped in his arms, watching snowfall. "Completely insane," he agreed, kissing my temple. Neither of us said the other thing we were both thinking, that insane felt like the first honest thing either of us had done in years. We were on the rooftop of Preston's building, champagne in plastic cups because we'd forgotten real glasses, watching the city prepare to explode into a new year. Navy Pier's Ferris wheel glowed in the distance, and everywhere below us, people gathered in clusters, counting down to something they hoped would be different. "I don't do New Year's resolutions," I said, the champagne making me philosophical. "They're just elaborate lies we tell ourselves about change." "What if you didn't have to lie?" Preston turned to face me, and something in his expression made my heart stop. "What if you could just become something new?" Before I could answer, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught. 3 days ago, we went into that vintage shop on Dearborn," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate Art Deco ring, diamond catching the city lights. "You looked at this for exactly 47 seconds before you put it back. You said it was too beautiful for real life. Preston, marry me tonight." His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "I know it's insane. I know we've known each other for 7 days. I know every logical reason this is a terrible idea. But Claire, I also know that I've never felt this certain about anything in my entire life. Marry me. Let's start the new year as something neither of us has been brave enough to be before." Every legal instinct I possessed screamed warnings. 7 days. Virtual stranger. Rebound. Red flags. Professional suicide. My divorce clients' faces flashed through my mind, each one a cautionary tale about rushed decisions and ignored warning signs. But standing there with champagne fizzing in my blood and this impossible man offering me something that felt like magic, I realized I was tired of being careful. Tired of building walls. Tired of letting past pain dictate future possibility. "Yes," I heard myself say. "God help me, yes." We found an all-night chapel on Clark Street, run by a sleepy officiant who'd clearly seen stranger things. At 11:58 p.m., we stood before him, my hands in Preston's, both of us breathless with the insanity of what we were doing. "I, Claire Ashford, take you." At midnight exactly, the city erupted. Fireworks exploded over the lake, car horns blared, somewhere nearby people were screaming with joy. The officiant pronounced us married, and Preston kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. We stumbled back to his apartment, husband and wife, laughing and terrified and exhilarated. At dawn, we sat on his balcony watching the first light of January 1st paint the sky pink and gold. "No regrets?" he asked, his arm around me, the ring heavy on my finger. "No regrets," I said, and meant it. For once in my carefully controlled life, I'd made a choice my lawyer brain couldn't second-guess to death. I'd chosen to trust. To believe. To leap without looking. I didn't know yet that I'd jumped straight off a cliff. Reality arrived with the alarm clock on January 2nd. Preston had a conference call at 7 a.m., taking it in the kitchen while I showered. Through the bathroom door, I heard his voice, clipped, professional, nothing like the man who'd whispered vows 12 hours earlier. When I emerged, he was staring at his laptop, jaw tight. "Everything okay?" I asked. His smile snapped into place too quickly. "Fine. Just boring work stuff. Corporate strategy consulting, it's as tedious as it sounds." But his hands were shaking when he closed the laptop. The calls multiplied. Always in another room, always with the door closed. I told myself it was normal, that not every conversation needed to be shared, that I was being paranoid. My own divorce cases had made me hypersensitive to secrecy, seeing betrayal in every closed door. On January 8th, we met his friend Marcus for drinks. Marcus was everything Preston wasn't: loud, gregarious, the kind of man who ordered rounds for strangers. When Preston mentioned we'd gotten married, Marcus's smile froze. "Married?" He glanced at Preston, something sharp passing between them. "That's sudden." "Congratulations." "Sudden's kind of our thing," I said lightly, but Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes for the rest of the night. In the bathroom later, I heard their voices through the wall. "Are you insane?" Marcus hissed. "Does she know?" "It's handled," Preston cut him off. "Drop it." When I returned, they were laughing about something innocuous, but the tension sat between us like a third person at the table. Work became my refuge. At Ashford & Klein, everything made sense: contracts, precedents, clear lines between right and wrong. On January 15th, my mentor Eleanor stopped by my office, her expression troubled. "I need to give you a heads up," she said, closing the door. "Meridian Industries is facing a hostile takeover. Some venture capital firm we've never heard of, moving fast and aggressive." The board spooked. Meridian was our biggest client, a tech company I'd been advising for 3 years. "Do we know who's behind it?" "Not yet. But Claire, this could get messy. They're playing dirty, corporate espionage, leaked documents, the works. I need you sharp on this." I promised I would be, ignoring the small voice asking why Preston's evasiveness had started right around the same time. That night, I found him on another call, speaking rapid-fire about timeline acceleration and securing the conflict. When he saw me, he ended the call abruptly. "Who was that?" I asked. "Client. They're demanding, but the money's good." He pulled me close, kissing my forehead. "How was your day?" I let him change the subject because I wanted to. Because admitting something was wrong meant admitting I'd made a catastrophic mistake. Because my entire professional reputation was built on recognizing red flags, and I'd married a man covered in them. So I smiled and said fine and told myself that not every secret was sinister. I'd get better at lying to myself before this was over. She arrived at my office on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed in Chanel and wearing a smile that could cut glass. "Claire Ashford?" The receptionist hadn't announced her. She'd simply appeared in my doorway like she'd been expected. "I'm Vanessa Sterling. I hope you have a moment. I think we need to talk about Preston." Everything about her screamed money and danger in equal measure. Auburn hair in a perfect chignon, heels that cost more than my monthly mortgage, diamond studs that caught the light like calculated warnings. She settled into my client chair with the grace of someone who'd never been told no. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "How do you know my husband?" "Husband." She tasted the word like wine. How wonderfully impulsive. That's so like Preston: grand gestures, sweeping romance. "I assume he swept you off your feet at some charity gala?" "He's excellent at those." My spine straightened. Ms. Sterling, I'm going to need you to get to the point. Of course. I'm Preston's ex-girlfriend and current business partner. We have some complicated financial entanglements. I wanted to introduce myself since he clearly hasn't mentioned me. She paused, letting that land. He didn't mention me, did he? Preston and I don't discuss his past relationships. How modern. Her smile sharpened. But some pasts don't stay past, Claire. May I call you Claire? Preston has a gambling problem. Significant debts to some very motivated creditors. I've been helping him manage the situation, but it requires strategic thinking. Strategic thinking. Preston excels at strategic relationships. Making connections that serve multiple purposes. Surely as a divorce attorney, you understand how that works. She stood, placing a business card on my desk. I'm sure this is all very uncomfortable. But you seem intelligent, and intelligent women deserve the full picture. Ask him about the $200,000 he owes. Ask him about his history of relationships with women who could solve his problems. She moved toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Claire? Did he mention me at all before you married him? Any ex-girlfriends, any business complications, anything that might have been relevant? The silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. She smiled, genuinely sympathetic now, which was somehow worse. Good luck. You're going to need it. I sat there for 20 minutes after she left, the business card burning a hole in my desk. When I finally went home, Preston was cooking dinner, humming the same off-key tune from Our Perfect Week. We need to talk about Vanessa Sterling, I said. He went completely still, the knife in his hand frozen above the cutting board. When he turned, his face was carefully blank. What did she tell you? That you owe money. That you have a gambling problem. That you have a pattern of strategic relationships. I crossed my arms. She suggested I was one of them. She's manipulating you. His voice was urgent now, desperate. Claire, yes, I owe her money. Yes, we were together. But everything she told you is designed to make you doubt me, doubt us. Then tell me the truth. He set down the knife, and I saw it, the thing I'd been missing. Fear, raw and real, flickering across his face like lightning. I'm handling it, he said finally. I promise you, it won't touch us. But it already had. I hired Michael Chin on February 1st, the same day I discovered Preston's toothbrush still in my bathroom and threw it in the trash with enough force to crack the porcelain holder. Chin was the kind of private investigator lawyers whispered about, former FBI, meticulous, expensive, and completely devoid of sympathy for human weakness. Perfect. I need everything, I told him in his sparse office that smelled like coffee and cynicism. Financial records, background, associates, where he's been for the past 3 months. If he sneezed suspiciously, I want to know about it. Ex-husband? Chin asked, not looking up from his notepad. Husband. For now. By February 4th, Chin had the financial records. Preston Hayes was drowning, $217,000 in gambling debts to an offshore syndicate called Meridian Holdings. The name made my stomach drop. Too close to Meridian Industries to be coincidence. The debt was purchased 6 months ago, Chin said, sliding documents across his desk. By Sterling Capital Ventures. Owner, Vanessa Sterling. She now owns every marker he signed. She owns him. Essentially. Chin pulled up another file. But here's where it gets interesting. Hayes has been documenting everything. Phone calls, meetings, email correspondence. Like he's building a case. Against Vanessa? Or covering his own ass. Hard to tell which. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop and stared at the cloud account Preston and I had set up to share photos from Our Perfect Week. I deleted the app from my phone, but the login still autofilled. The password prompt appeared. I tried Christmas and Winterlight and Magic, all failed. Then, hating myself, I typed 010125. Our wedding date. It opened. The main folder was empty except for one file buried in a subfolder labeled Insurance. Audio recordings, dated from November through December. I clicked the first one with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Vanessa's voice, smooth and cold, 200,000, Preston. That's what you owe people who don't accept payment plans. Unless you'd like me to forward this information to your employer? I need more time. You need a solution. I'm offering you one. Claire Ashford is lead counsel on the Meridian Industries case. Get close to her. Create a conflict of interest that forces her recusal. Do this, and your debt disappears. Silence. Then Preston's voice, defeated, how close? As close as necessary. You've always been charming. Use it. I skipped ahead to December 20th, 4 days before the gala. The approach is set for the 24th, Preston said. Winterlight Gala. She'll be there. I've confirmed it. And you understand what needs to happen? Marriage before the January 5th board meeting. Create an ethics violation she can't ignore. His voice was flat, mechanical. I understand. But then there was December 28th, 3 days into our perfect week. We need to talk, Preston said. I can't do this. Can't? Vanessa's laugh was sharp. You mean won't? You're catching feelings, Preston? How inconvenient. She's not what you said. I didn't expect. I don't care what you expected. You have 4 days to secure that marriage license or I destroy you. Your choice. The last recording was from January 15th. It's done, Preston said quietly. We're married. The conflict exists. But Vanessa, I need out. I'll find another way to pay. There is no out. You're mine until I say otherwise. And Preston? If you even think about telling her the truth, I'll make sure she loses everything, her career, her firm, her license. You wanted to play hero? Then play it all the way through. I sat in the dark, my laptop glowing like an accusation, and realized I had no idea what the truth was anymore. Had he been a liar who fell for his mark? A victim who'd tried to protect me? Both? Neither? The only thing I knew for certain was that in 4 days, our divorce would be final. And I still had no idea who I'd actually married. The text came at 8:47 p.m., underground parking. Monroe and Wacker. Come alone. Final offer. Versus. I should have called the police. Should have ignored it. Should have done literally anything except get in my car and drive to a deserted parking garage on a Wednesday night. But I'd spent 10 days listening to those recordings, hearing Preston's voice shift from calculated to desperate to something that sounded disturbingly like genuine anguish. I needed to see this through. The garage was concrete and shadows, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My footsteps echoed as I descended to level P3. Then I heard it, a grunt of pain, the sound of something heavy hitting a car. Preston was on his knees between 2 SUVs, blood streaming from his nose. 2 men in expensive suits stood over him, one holding his arm at an angle that made my stomach turn. Claire, don't, Preston's voice was thick with blood. It's a trap, you need to. That's enough. Vanessa's voice cut through the garage like a blade. She emerged from behind a concrete pillar, impeccable in Dior, holding a tablet like a weapon. Claire. So glad you could join us. Let him go, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. In a moment. First, I want to show you something. She tapped the tablet, and video footage appeared, Preston at my apartment, opening my laptop, downloading files. Date stamp, January 24th, corporate espionage. Ethics violations. Your husband has been very busy stealing confidential information about Meridian Industries. The State Bar will be fascinated. You forced him. Did I? Or did he see an opportunity and take it? She smiled. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over every file related to the Meridian case. Tonight. Right now. Then you're going to walk away from this marriage, this investigation, and pretend none of it happened. And if I don't? Then I send this footage to the Illinois State Bar with a detailed report of your husband's activities. You lose your license. Your firm collapses. Everyone you've built your career with goes down with you. She tilted her head. Unless you'd like to try fighting me in court? I have resources you can't imagine. I sent everything to the SEC, Preston choked out, struggling against the men holding him. The recordings, the blackmail, all of it. You're finished, Vanessa. She laughed, the sound bouncing off concrete. Your word against mine, darling. You're a gambling addict with massive debts and documented motive. I'm a respected venture capitalist. Who do you think they'll believe? She looked at me. You have 30 seconds to decide, Claire. Sign over the files, or destroy everything you've worked for. A third man stepped from the shadows, and the gun in his hand caught the fluorescent light. Claire, don't trust her, Preston said desperately. Everything I did, yes, it started as manipulation, but I fell for you. The recordings prove she's behind everything. You just have to. 15 seconds, Vanessa interrupted. I looked at Preston, bleeding and trapped. At Vanessa, perfectly composed with all the power. At the gun, black and absolute. Every instinct I'd honed over 12 years screamed that this was the moment, the choice that would define everything. Trust the liar who might have loved me, or the monster who definitely wanted to destroy me. The lawyer in me knew the smart play. But I'd stopped being smart the moment I said yes to a stranger at a Christmas gala. I reached into my coat pocket and pressed record on my phone. Tell me again, I said to Vanessa, voice steady, exactly what you want me to do. Vanessa spent exactly 4 minutes detailing her entire scheme before she realized I was recording. By then, it was too late. The FBI arrived 12 minutes after I sent the audio file from my phone. Vanessa's bodyguard dropped the gun the moment he saw badges. The men holding Preston released him and disappeared into the garage's shadows like they'd never existed. Vanessa's face when she realized what I'd done was almost worth the previous 6 weeks of hell. You recorded me, she said, voice flat with disbelief. I'm a divorce attorney, I replied. I know how to gather evidence. The next 48 hours were depositions, federal agents, and lawyers speaking in the clipped language of criminal conspiracy. Preston's recordings combined with my parking garage confession painted a clear picture: blackmail, corporate espionage, extortion. Vanessa Sterling had orchestrated a hostile takeover using manipulation and threats. By Valentine's Day morning, we were sitting in a federal courtroom waiting to testify. Preston wore the same suit he'd worn to our wedding, and the irony wasn't lost on either of us. Thank you, he said quietly during a recess. For trusting me. Or at least trusting yourself enough to get evidence. I wasn't sure which I was doing, I admitted. Does it matter? I don't know yet. After our testimony, we stood on the courthouse steps while February wind cut through our coats. Downtown Chicago stretched around us, indifferent to the small drama of two people trying to figure out what was real. I need to say this, Preston started, turning to face me. Everything between us, the conversations at the gala, the week we spent together, falling for you, that was real. The marriage might have started as Vanessa's strategy, but somewhere around day 3, it became the most genuine thing in my life. I know that doesn't erase the lie it started from, but you need me to know the difference, I finished. Yes. I looked at him, this man who was simultaneously my biggest mistake and the most honest mirror I'd ever faced. We have two choices. We can annul this entire disaster and walk away. Chalk it up to temporary insanity and a cautionary tale. Or we can tear up the divorce papers and actually date like normal people. Meet each other properly. See if any of this survives without champagne and blackmail and criminal conspiracies. I pulled my coat tighter. Start over with the one thing neither of us had on Christmas Eve. What's that? The truth. Preston laughed, the first genuine sound I'd heard from him in weeks, maybe ever. I'd like that. I'd like to meet my wife for the first time. She's a divorce attorney with trust issues and a tendency to overthink everything. Sounds terrifying. She is. We found a quiet cafe 3 blocks from the courthouse, ordered coffee, and sat across from each other like strangers on a first date. Which, in a way, we were. So, Preston said, wrapping his hands around his mug. Tell me about yourself, Claire Ashford. I smiled despite everything. I'm recently separated. It's complicated. I love complicated. Outside, couples walked past carrying roses and heart-shaped balloons, celebrating a holiday about love. We sat in our cafe, 2 people who'd met on Christmas, married on New Year's, and almost divorced by Valentine's Day, trying to figure out if anything real could grow from such poisoned soil. I didn't know if we'd make it. But for the first time since I'd found those documents in the envelope, I trusted myself enough to find out.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed this story, you're going to love what's coming next. It's wilder, deeper, and full of twists you won't see coming. So go ahead, like the video, drop a comment, and hit subscribe. Get ready, because the next story is about to blow your mind.